Minnesota Vikings have been around since 1961. And I just want them to win a damn Super Bowl before I die. Welcome to Before I Die with Judd and Jessi on Purple Daily and Score North.
Just one before I die. Guys, I don't know about you, but I know on New Year's Eve, watching the atrocity that was the Minnesota Vikings versus Green Bay game, I consumed a couple of Surly's before I dies, just very sadly. Like, this is happening again. But that's the theme of the show. This year, not looking like the Vikings are going to get us the Super Bowl before we die, but I'm Jessi Pierce, host of Bar Down Beauties, frequenter over on Judd's Hockey Show, and writer for NHL.com. He's Mr. Positivity, everyone's favorite sports dad, Judd Zulgad. And over here we got producer Ross, who... This year, Ross, we have felt some pain, not some pain, but why do you love the Vikings?
I love the Vikings because the pain lets me know that I am still alive, and oh boy, has there been some pain recently. A lot of pain in the second half of this season, and too much of it.
The problem with that is, you guys, they should have just done what we had wanted them to do at the beginning of the year and just tanked, right? Like, why did we have to go and be like, sure, maybe we'll do this, and oh, Josh Dobbs, here comes this. This season, you guys, the tumult, the roller coaster I've been asked to get off forever and ever, it was worse this year, Judd. It really was. I can't take it.
You know what it was a lot like? 2020 with Zimmer. That team, same thing. They traded Ngakoue at the deadline. It's like, this season is over. You should trade more guys. They don't. They go to Green Bay. They win a game in Green Bay. Then they start a run. The same exact thing. The Vikings love, like all sports teams in this town, deep down, they love to torture their fan base. They love to do that. They love to, just when you think they're dead, they'll rise up from the grave and tease you, and then they'll go back in the tank. And that's what, I mean, if you look at the parallels, 2020 and this are very similar. And it went from, hey, the team's going to stink, but they're going to get a high draft pick, to, oh, no, they're not dead. They've won 4 or 5 games in a row, down to, I mean, I don't know what we saw on Sunday, but that was as bad as you can, I think, against the Packers. That's about as bad as it can get at home against Green Bay. Like, that's some bottom of the barrel crap right there.
Think about what we've been through the last 2 seasons as Vikings fans, the ups and downs of the 13-4 year, that in all honesty could have easily been a 7-10 year like the one the Minnesota Vikings might be facing. Then this year you get, again, what could be 7-10, maybe 8-9, likely 7-10, and you can start picking through that schedule. Aside from a handful of games, Judd, to your point, you can start looking at some of these games and go, well, they could have beat Denver. Perhaps they beat the Chargers earlier this year. It's just been an incredibly wild ride for the Minnesota Vikings the last few years. And in all honesty, just think about what we've been through the last 6 weeks with Josh Dobbs, Nick Mullins, Jaren Hall, back to Nick Mullins, and still somehow, albeit really no realistic chance, heading into Week 18, the final week of the season, you're not eliminated from the playoffs, and you have played 3 different quarterbacks in the last month and a half. That's borderline incredible, and I don't know what to make of it. I really don't.
And they're heading in against a very angry Dan Campbell.
Oh,
and the
yeah.
Detroit Lions.
Good.
So
Go Lions.
Just aggressive. I am here for it, though, in case you guys missed what happened to Detroit. Go look it up. Quick little Google search and see how they kind of got screwed over in favor of the NFL script writers once again as they head into Week 18 against your Minnesota Vikings. Speaking of kind of not getting screwed over per se, but as you had mentioned there, Ross, the quarterback situation has been a contentious point all season for the Minnesota Vikings ever since they lost Kirk Cousins to that Achilles injury in that first Green Bay victory. But then they had Josh Dobbs, who were like, yay, we like Josh Dobbs. And then you had Nick Mullins, and you're like, okay, he's better than Josh Dobbs. And then you're like, boo, Nick Mullins, we're going to put in Jaren Hall. No, he's also bad. I mean, Jaren Hall, 5 for 10, passing for 67 yards and 2 turnovers. He obviously got pulled for the wild card that is Nick Mullins to me, because that dude just kind of, I never know what he's going to do. He's going to be aggressive with it. I like it. Given those quarterbacks, guys, Dobbs, Hall, and Mullins, as you head into Week 18 against Detroit, KOC again, not naming his quarterback. Who's your quarterback, Judd Zulgad?
All right, so KOC said in his Monday press conference that he had picked the QB because the players were off. He hadn't told them yet, so he wasn't going to tell us. I think it's going to be Josh Dobbs. And here's why. Josh Dobbs stepped in and did a nice job. Now, he fell apart, but, you know, he gets benched. Mullins steps in. and was just in the toilet the whole time, right? Like he stepped in at the end of the Raiders game. He didn't train wreck it, but okay. But then he plays against the Bengals. That game was a disaster. The next game's a disaster. Jaron Hall, who we saw play for part of a first quarter against the Falcons and look good, looks like he's incapable of playing. Like that Packers game was scary. I think they took him out for his own sanity. Like I don't think he got benched because of he's doing okay, but he's not. He was awful. He looked like he was scared. So I think they go back to Dobbs as a bit of a thank you. That's my prediction.
I would agree. How long of a leash do you guys think? And Ross, we'll start with you. How long of a leash does Jaron Hall have? I mean, he was a 5th-round pick, so I think the Vikings aren't certainly ready to necessarily give up on him per se. And KOC said something interesting during intermission of the game against Green Bay, saying, hey, yeah, we weren't expecting him to be good, which is a crazy thing to say about any one of your players, right? Knowing what's on the line, knowing that it's Green Bay, knowing it's this rivalry. But where do you think Jaron Hall falls as far as the future and he in the Minnesota Vikings?
Well, it is pretty incredible for Kevin O'Connell to say something at halftime along the lines of, he struggled a bit. It wasn't all that unexpected, in which my comeback would be, there's two schools of thought here. If it wasn't all that unexpected, why were you playing him in a must-win game? Or if it wasn't all that unexpected, then he should have just been back out there to start the second half, and you should just be rolling with him through the end of the season so he can get the experience. As far as where I think he fits with the Minnesota Vikings long-term, I don't think anything that's happened this year changes anything. He is the developmental guy. He is maybe your backup down the road 2-3 years from now. Heck, if the Vikings don't make a move for a quarterback in the offseason of any sorts to be the heir apparent to Kirk Cousins or the immediate replacement, he may, with another offseason under his belt, be the backup next year, but I don't think he was ever brought in here with the intent to be the future starting quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. If he was, it was because they got incredibly lucky, a la Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks, or any other quarterback that's been taken in the 3rd or 4th round, Dak Prescott to the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think it changes anything with Jaron Hall. He'll absolutely be on the roster next year. It just depends, is he the number 2 or the number 3?
Kirill Kaprizov was a 5th-round pick, too, for those of you that maybe forgot and didn't know.
Very comparable. 5th-round wingers and 4th-round quarterbacks and 5th-round quarterbacks. Very comparable NHL to NFL, I believe, right?
Hall, though, was not stuck in Russia.
True.
So that's the difference there. At least with Kirill, it's like, well, he's not going to come over for a long time.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Hall was stuck in
Why am I blanking?
Correct?
Yeah, why am I blanking on where? Yeah, where is BYU though? Why am I blanking on that? I was going to make
right?
Provo,
it's in
right?
one of those weird
Provo. There we go, Provo, Utah.
Provo, Utah.
I was going to make a Utah-Russia joke, but I couldn't think of the city he was in. So
that spoils it, Roscoe, right there. You got.
I know. I know.
Provo.
I'm sorry.
I mean,
I'll change my best.
Since we get to talk quarterbacks, let's start with Kirk Cousins, you guys. Let's start there. 36 years old, has thrown for 4,000 yards in 4 seasons and 30 touchdowns in 3 since joining the Minnesota Vikings in 2018. First things first reaction, guys. Kirk Cousins, is he back in the Minnesota Vikings uniform next year? Judd?
I think he is now. I think he's back. They've talked about on a lot of occasions they want him back. My fear is that despite the fact that you cannot compare Kirk to the 3 guys who have replaced him, because those guys are backups at best, or in Hall's case, just a raw player. But here's what I think. Because of how the Vikings operate, I think they're going to bring Kirk back, and I think they're going to go defense with a high 1st-round pick. That's now I would personally take a quarterback, and I would personally move on from Kirk, because at some point in time you have to. Like, look at what the Bears, the Bears are playing well now. Well, guess what? They're young. They've got players up and coming. The Packers appear to have found a quarterback who, if not, he might not be certainly Favre or Rodgers, but he looks way more competent than we thought. And the Lions are right now the champions of the division. So I would take this opportunity to hit the reset button. The Vikings don't. So I think that they're going to bring back Kirk. I think they're going to sign Jefferson to a huge contract. I think there's a fighting chance Danielle Hunter leaves, which is too bad. But I think they're going to go defense 1st round. That is not, just to be very clear, that's not what I would do. But you're asking me what I think they will do. And covering this team for a long time, there's not a lot of originality, even though the characters do change.
But certainly let Judd know what you feel on X and all that stuff. Make sure you're tweeting at him saying what a crazy,
Go right at him.
outrageous thing.
I want a new
that is
quarterback.
that he's saying.
I like Kirk. Kirk's great. Took his shirt off. Hilariously funny. He's more
Best thing in
likable
that
now.
game. Yeah.
He's more likable now, and that's awesome. But I mean, these guys need to eventually hit a reset button. They just don't want to.
Are you thinking a $30-40 million contract for Kirk? I mean, he has now the numbers that would support, and especially with how the Vikings
I don't think
have
he's going to take a team
performed.
friendly.
No,
I think
right?
he's gonna
get
I
paid.
think he's going to get more. Yeah, if Kirk takes a reasonable contract, you guys, that would change my opinion. But I mean, Kirk Cousins has never taken less. And I will say this. He will exceed for sure what Daniel Jones got. And Daniel Jones got a pretty good payday. Ain't no way Kirk Cousins and his reps are going to allow him to be paid, the same or less, in my opinion, than Daniel Jones.
Here's a hypothetical for both of you, Judd and Jessi, because, Judd, I'm terrified of what you said. I actually feel like that's what the Vikings will do. Let's just say they stay where they're at right now, roughly. Let's give them the 10th pick in the upcoming NFL draft. So maybe they take a defensive player. Would you then turn around? Would you be okay with, let's say it was 42, or maybe they moved up to pick 37 in the second round, and they took the best of who was left? Maybe that's J.J. McCarthy, maybe that's Bo Nix, maybe that's somebody else, and they're still going to sit for a year or two and maybe be the heir apparent. Would you be okay with that? Would that be okay? Or is the absolute preferred method, no matter what happens with Kirk Cousins, you are spending that 10th overall pick or moving up or moving back in the first round and taking a quarterback? What would you do?
Go ahead, Jessi.
So you're saying they would go with Judd's plan, and your first round pick is a defensive player.
It's not my plan.
It's not his plan. It's his belief.
It's Judd's plan.
Let me
No,
very
it's Judd's
clear.
plan.
Hey, X, that's not my plan. I'm afraid of it.
Jessie's just trying to get you lit up on X.
I know she is. I know exactly what she's doing. That's why I'm not going to. I'm going to defend myself.
So to be clear, I'm saying at 10 the Vikings take, let's say it's an edge rusher,
Yep.
and at 42 they take Bo Nix because he's still sitting
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
Would you be okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all for best available, I guess, if that's the plan you're going to adhere to. And we had talked about, I believe, last week's episode. I want aggressive. I want you to move up and get a good quarterback, because the Minnesota Vikings have never done that. As Judd said, it's a very sit and complacent type of approach, and I want to see some aggressiveness. I want to see some drive and some, yes, we want this. So it's not my ideal situation. I would prefer them, yes, to move up and take a quarterback in the first round with that. Maybe Jaden Daniels. I don't know. I'm just throwing names out there. But I would otherwise settle for. I would be okay with them doing something to get a quarterback with their next pick.
I mean, I think it'd be smart, but my problem is this too. So this is where the 2022 draft bites them in the behind as well. Lewis Cine is unplayable. I mean, he played like 6 snaps on Sunday, and we celebrated because he hadn't played in 2 months. Andrew Booth Jr., who was getting some playing time midseason and got a little bit because of injuries on Sunday, is basically not part of the plan, or at least he has not been, right?
Heck of a hit in the post game though, Judd, hitting that undressed player.
Well, yeah, so he hit the undressed player. The undressed Packer player took a shot at Booth and hit Aaron Jones, and Jones thought Booth had hit him. It was like the Three Stooges. But the problem is, like, we're talking about a draft where the top of the draft didn't produce much. So, like, now you've got to try and recoup those. Like, you've got either draft guys to replace, that's the problem, is the depth. This is why you can't whiff on first round, second round. Like, you look at that draft, there's a lot of whiffs there. That's a problem. That being said, if they took a quarterback in the second round, the only problem there is this. That's a 4-year contract, not 5.
Yep. Correct.
So are you going to have that guy sit for 2 years and now have 2 years left on his contract behind Kirk? I just really think that if they keep Kirk, I could see them justifying in their minds having a hopefully better backup, but not drafting a QB high, because they're always in it to win it.
I can also see a scenario, and I want to know what you guys think about this, very similar to the Teddy Bridgewater draft, where they wait and see who's falling. And to your point, Judd, even if there's a guy that they say, oh, we could probably get him at 37, they might trade up to grab him at 31 or 32 to get that extra year. So I still lean towards, maybe it's just because I'm thinking with my heart and not how the Vikings would think, or I'm thinking with my brain and not their brain, I still think they're going to leave the first round of the NFL draft with a quarterback in some way, shape, or form. But I still continue to believe, like many, the best way to do that is if Cousins comes back, just to have whoever it is wait behind him. Because, yeah, this roster has flaws, but they can compete next year, and they can compete to maybe not win a Super Bowl, but I would like to think they would be in the mix with the roster coming back and if Kirk Cousins stays healthy. But I want to win one before I die, like the show says, and the only way to do that is to truly restart that clock at quarterback, kiddos. So that's got to happen at some point. And very quickly, 49ers, keep an eye on them. If they go belly up right away in the playoffs,
they could pursue Kirk.
It's possible they could pursue Kirk.
And
Not convinced, but it's possible.
And the Falcons could too. Like, the Falcons make a lot of sense. His wife's from there. But the thing, if Kirk comes back, okay, so consider this too. If Kirk comes back and you sign, and I think you will, Jefferson to a contract extension, right? And I asked Phil and Dex this as well. Do you think those two veterans are going to say, you know what we should do? Draft a quarterback high. Of course they're not. They're going to say, if Kirk comes back, get us guys that can help in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
So like, think about the philosophy of the players, because they don't give a damn about 2025, 26. They want to win now. So if your options are Kirk's coming back, but we're going to take a quarterback in the first round, your core guys are going to say, no, let's take defense there. Let's get an edge that can step in the first day. So, I mean, this is a very slippery slope. It's very intriguing, and it's going to take somebody with a lot of intestinal fortitude not to cave in and do something short term, which it seems is what the Vikings continually do, which is the short term.
Curious question for you guys, to both of you. I'd like you to answer honestly. Where does Kirk rank on your Vikings quarterback list?
All time?
Ooh.
All time.
Oh,
that's a great question.
Thank you.
I've done this before, so
But
Tarkington.
is he higher up on your list than you would have ever thought? And do you think that
high.
you have gotten the best years out of Kirk? Like, that's, I guess, my other concern about signing him again is, like, can he continue at this level? Like, I don't know.
And he's coming off a torn Achilles. He's
Right.
going to be 36 in August. All very, very good points. I personally don't think he will ever win a championship.
Yeah.
I think he can be effective, but I don't think he's ever going to win a championship. But I mean, he's second or third. Tarkington's one.
Yeah.
But I mean, but I say that with this
No
disclaimer.
respect for Dante? That's kind of
Well, okay, let me hop in here really quickly, Judd. So I think Tark's easily number one, Fran Tarkington, right? You immediately start at number two. You start deciding, okay, well, Culpepper and Cousins are probably 2 and 3. It just, I guess, all depends how you want to frame the argument,
Right.
who's 2 and who's 3. You could make the argument that Brett Favre could be 2 if you're just talking about one season.
Yeah,
but I
don't do that though. I think
No.
it's got.
There's got to be
I
a
think it
minimum
has to
number of
be-
seasons with
Yeah,
the team.
I don't think it can be the one and done.
Yeah, there's got to be some longevity, so
And
he
plus,
falls
Brett Favre in 2010
farther down the
was-
list.
That was a disaster.
Correct.
So Favre, the whole Favre experience was its own weird thing. Yeah, it's probably in fairness statistically as well, it's probably Tarkington, Cousins, Dante, and then what? Kramer, Moon.
Yeah, Kramer,
Mm-hmm.
Brad
Moon.
Johnson maybe in there a little bit. I mean,
God
that's
bless
the
him, no.
that's the thing. Like, the Vikings aren't the Bears, but you're also really, outside of Fran Tarkington, not talking about this franchise that historically has the world's greatest quarterbacks.
Get this: they have never drafted a quarterback in the first round who immediately started.
Yes,
Yep.
isn't that nuts?
Culpepper didn't. Teddy didn't. Now Teddy did start eventually because I think Matt Castle got hurt.
Yes.
But they have never drafted a quarterback and started that guy immediately. And that is absolutely crazy. But it speaks to how few quarterbacks they have truly drafted in the first round as well.
Yeah, that's fair. So
I-
I'm just curious about that.
I'm struggling with that question, Jessi. I don't know if I put him second or third. I mean, Culpepper, you had what? 1 NFC championship game? Maybe 2? 1, right?
One
40, 41
MVP
donut.
type season.
Mm-hmm.
But Cousins has had more stability.
Right.
Yeah,
He's
that's
consistent.
tough.
Cousins has always been very consistent.
Yes, and his numbers are probably Like he doesn't run, but obviously his passing stats are really good.
Mm-hmm.
But I think your question. So I would personally, off the top of my head, go Tarkington, Cousins, Culpepper, probably Kramer and Moon. Cunningham to me and Favre are their own entities because they're just such special pop-ups. But that being said, that's a damning thing because I'm not saying Cousins is second, and I think that's great. I'm saying look at the dearth of quarterbacks this franchise has had.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said this for a long time. I don't think they've had anyone you could consider a franchise quarterback since Tarkington because Dante's run was too short, in my opinion, to be considered what we think of as a franchise quarterback.
At this point, would you say, even if it hasn't lived up to the top billing, though, that Kirk Cousins at some degree is your franchise quarterback because he started for now more than half a decade and may start for a couple more seasons?
Yeah, but I mean, I think you're torturing the term, but yes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yep.
Let's talk more about
Donovan McNabb, bridge quarterback, best bridge quarterback the Vikings ever had. Donovan McNabb.
The greatest quote of all time.
All those short hops.
Hey Wendy's, we're coming. Hey Burger King, we're coming. And it's like, oh my God, he's really going to eat that much. Very impressive.
Donovan.
So good. Let's talk a little bit more about Kirk Cousins and what the injury that he sustained this year has meant to the quote unquote biggest, baddest, worst, maybe one of the badder seasons the Minnesota Vikings have had. In comments from YouTube.
I like your transition there,
Badder,
Jessi.
worst.
Comments from YouTube.
Can't be a constant winner, guys. I can't,
it's okay.
you know.
Jessi, you have to carry us every week. It's okay that every now and then you should fall and we might have to pick you up and do our
That
best.
wasn't bad.
Thank you.
This first comment comes from Phil Colvin, 4058. This season was about turnovers. Turnovers, very little running, and poor clock management up until Cousins got injured. The question? In this lost season, Judd and Jessi, the biggest culprit for the lost season, aside from the Cousins injury, what are you blaming on the lost season aside from the Cousins injury? Judd, you can go first.
Oh, it's mistakes. I mean, he's exactly right. Don't forget, with Cousins and Jefferson, this team was 1-4.
Yep.
0-3, 1-4. Why? Because they did not protect the football. They did not protect the football. And that 1-4 start was because of that. So I feel like we're giving this whole thing a little bit of a pass because the quarterback situation after Kirk got hurt. And yes, that's true. But keep in mind, I believe you won 5 consecutive games while Kirk was out. And I know it can be considered fluky, but the protecting of the football comes down to a lot of things, including coaching. And so I think that's a big thing. And also this team was 2-6 at home.
Mm-hmm.
8-1 last year. Now they played 9 games in 2022. They played 8 games at home in 23, but 2-6. That's one of the worst since the Vikings moved indoors in 82. Okay. They went 2-6 in the 3-13 season at home with Les Steckel, 84. They went 1-7 in the 3-13 year with Les Frazier. But this is among the worst seasons at home the Vikings have ever had indoors. That's a very interesting thing for a team that for a long time has taken a lot of pride in our stadium is tough to play in. US Bank was an easy place to play this season.
I mean, I think Judd nailed it. That is the biggest problem. It was these simple mistakes, the basic things. You couldn't play basic game football. I'm going to toss in this. An underwhelming season from TJ Hawkinson. I think that's also something that maybe we haven't explored as much. And I don't know if you guys agree or disagree with me, but I just have been very unimpressed with the way Hawk had played the majority of games. And I think that's largely in part to the fact that he got paid big time. So I was expecting far, far better from him. But I think Hawk plays a slight role too, because this could have been, especially when JJ goes out, this could have been something that he could have stepped in and really taken to the next level. And I would have expected him to, given the contract that they had signed him to, injuries aside to him as well. I just think Hawkinson's underwhelming performance this season also attributes to what ends up being a kind of catastrophic, terrible bad season for the Vikings.
And definitely seems like there were a lot more drops from him than normal. Maybe that was injury related. Maybe it gets cleaned up next year.
Mm-hmm.
To to Judd's point on the Vikings moving indoors back in, 1982, and this being one of their worst seasons indoors, anecdotally, in only a handful of games, you know who plays really well indoors? Michael Penix Jr. Just saying. He loves playing in those indoor stadiums.
2 torn ACLs, Roscoe. 2 torn ACLs.
Find him 5 guys that can keep him upright and don't ask him to run too much. That's all I got to say. Comment number 2 from YouTube, and I think this one hits right to Sports Dad. And Jessi, I think we're going to start calling you Sports Mom because you are a mom. You're now well-versed into sports. Judd, I don't know how you feel about that, but Sports Dad, Sports Mom, Here we go. This is from 200 CDL, which I believe is a driver's license class, correct? You're young, you got time, me not so long. This is in reference to the mantra, before I die. The question to Sports Dad and Sports Mom, what's your advice for young and new Minnesota Vikings fans? Jessi, you go first.
Jessi goes, yeah.
Ironically, I had
Don't
a
do it!
conversation with my 6-year-old on New Year's Eve because he was staying up and he goes, you know what, Mom? I'm sad. And I said, why is that? He's like, well, because the Vikings are losing. And I said, you're going to have to get used to that. Like, this is nothing. It's not a big deal. Like, he obviously doesn't understand. He just knows, well, Mom and Dad like this team, so I'm going to cheer for that. I will encourage him to, no, actually, I won't. No, he's born here. This is what we're given. You're given this. You're born here. This is your team. You don't get to choose. You don't get to say, hey, you know what? I like the Cowboys. I don't care. You don't. You live in Minnesota. You deal with this pain. My advice to him is just get used to it. It's fine. It's not a big deal. It'll be fine.
What builds calluses, right? Builds strong muscles being a Vikings fan.
Kid needs a beer is what the kid needs.
Well, exactly. I was drinking one of my before I dies, and I was like, this is
how we get through it, Junior.
Yep.
This is how we get through it about 12 years from now.
Oh.
You'll be absolutely fine with these heartbreaking defeats.
Mm-hmm.
What do you got, Judd? That's it? Beer?
Yeah.
Give the kid a beer?
What would I tell him? I mean, I don't know. It's
buckle
not
up.
It's not like we're alone here. I mean, there's young people who have been Lions fans, right? I mean, but I would tell them that always prepare yourself to be disappointed, because if you don't, you're going to be surprised way too much. Like the Vikings fans, to your point, have calluses. Say what? Well, I was expecting it. I was expecting the worst thing to happen. So I would say that rarely do good things happen to this team, and they will tease you, but they will often break your heart. Sort of like a relationship. Kids should learn, right? You got to get your heart broken in relationships, whether that be with a boyfriend or girlfriend or the Vikings. It's perfect. It's a life lesson.
Do you guys have that moment? And I actually kind of vividly remember one of mine where you just remember or think for the first time, boy, following this team sucks.
Yeah.
For me, it was the 99 NFC Championship game. Ross, speaking in the third person, would have been 12, 13 years old, watching the game with my dad and a couple neighbors. And after the game, I don't think I really stormed off. I've never been that type of person, but I think I just kind of stared angrily or blankly. Good old Pops comes up, puts his arm around me almost instantly after the game and just goes, now you know what it's like to be a Vikings fan. Mm-hmm. I've thought about that every season since 1999. Every season.
Yep. I mean,
it bonds us, really. It bonds us, though. It makes us a stronger person. If our winters aren't outside, yes, exactly. Our winters outside already make us stronger people. We're better people for it, if you ask me. What fun is it to be Boston? That sounds like a parade every other year. Come on now.
Imagine the jubilation when we finally win something in this town outside of the Gopher women's hockey team and the Minnesota Lynx, which, by the way, taking nothing away from them, I always say, it's the women in this town that carry the sports water for the men. Right? Yeah. And hopefully they keep winning. The men got to do something at some point.
Do they?
Maybe not. At this point, maybe not.
Well, speaking of doing things before we die, let's get to our Before I Dies.
Time now for the Before I Die crew to give us their Before I Dies.
You want me to go? I'll kick it off.
You go first.
Let's go.
Go ahead.
Obviously, 'tis the season for bowl games, you guys. We've seen a lot on the field, off the field. I am here, though, you guys, for more unhinged things happening during the bowl games, like the mayo bowl and getting dumped on with mayo, which is just disgusting. I couldn't stop watching. I was like, ugh, so gross. The Pop-Tart mascot. I want more of these fun off-field shenanigans. More of that. Take the world by storm. Who cares about the game when there's so many of them? When every other day it's this random. Like, I only want sponsors that are there to have fun with it and be a little crazy, a little chaotic, a little unhinged, because that makes it even more entertaining when nobody wants to watch two, 6-win teams duke it out for literally nothing except maybe to get dumped on with mayo. That's what I want before I die.
That Pop-Tart Bowl was unbelievable.
That's unbelievable.
That's one of the most incredible things I've seen. I don't remember who played.
No.
The fact that they toasted the Pop-Tart.
And they ate him.
And then ate the Pop-Tart. I mean, who thought of this? And here's my question. How many drugs were done in the idea of that game? Like, that's people smoking dope. I don't know what they're doing, hallucinogenics, but those people were, I guarantee they were not sober.
Incredible.
I've thought about this and talked about this with even buddies since the game a couple days ago. You know how this went down too. This person is explaining it to other people in the office
like,
or their friends and family, and they're like, this is going to go over like a lead balloon. Why are we doing this?
They were all high, Russ.
But it's so preposterous and stupid that it was awesome.
No, they're
and the memes that came from it are incredible.
It's
Did you see them?
reminiscent. It's reminiscent of Katy Perry's Left Shark.
Yes,
Remember Left Shark?
yes, yeah,
Left
Left
Shark,
Shark.
our mascot, couldn't do anything, and you're like, "What is happening?"
Yeah,
Very
but
much
this
like
was
that.
a whole game
It was a whole
orchestrated
game.
around this one thing. That was done by a room filled with people smoking marijuana for sure, and they loved it. And the more they talked about it, some guys like, hold on a second. What if we got a huge toaster? I mean, a huge toaster, and lowered Ted. Ted, you're going to do this into that. I mean, I'm telling you right now, there is no way somebody sane ran this through a room of sober people. This was all done. By the time that they were done, they were eating mass quantities of Pop-Tarts. And then we got to play some music when we got the Pop-Tart. Oh, it's just genius.
And don't forget the game, like 5 minutes before kickoff, that Pop-Tart came out of the toaster.
Yeah, just
So he
raised up
came
and
out
was
of
like,
the
"Yeah,
toaster, then
Pop-Tart."
right went back in.
If you guys go back and watch, and I'm not joking, if you guys go back and watch late 60s, early 70s kids TV shows, not cartoons, but there's a show called HR Puffin Stuff, okay? And you can find it on YouTube. And what it is a bunch of young adults, I guarantee you, got high as kites. And we're like, kids will love this because it's seemingly fun. This is what this was. Who the hell gets in a Pop-Tart costume for an entire afternoon? That's the thing about this. This wasn't a halftime show, you guys.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was the entire show, the entire game.
And I don't know who played, and I don't care.
The one part that I was giggling at, too, was a missed field goal and the Pop-Tarts trying to catch the missed field goal with a net off of the net.
And you're telling me that person was not baked?
And then, I don't know if you guys saw it at the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl on New Year's Day. It's the same conglomerate. So they were doing similar things where I think they were poking fun at
Please don't kill
the
me.
Pop-Tart. Yeah, I was like, or please don't eat me or something.
Please
And
don't
had the
eat
same
me.
had like the same signs, and he was also, or she also, coming out of the box of Cheez-Its and going back in. So
good.
So well done. And Jessi, you hit the nail on the head. And I've said this from the get-go. How many bowl games? There's going to be 42 by the end of it if you count the national championship. I'm not lying. I've watched bits and pieces of 35 plus of these games. I love them. But a part of loving them is the absurdity of them, right? So the Mayo Bowl is classic. I don't know if you guys saw this. Mike Loxley, he won the Mayo Bowl last year with Maryland. Won whatever bowl game they were in this year. I think it was the Music City Bowl. He gets doused with Gatorade. And the sideline reporter says, "How did that feel?" And he immediately goes, "Oh, it felt a lot better than that Mayo did last year." Yeah, so the Duke's Mayo Bowl is still getting schlepped by the coach who was in the game the year before. Embrace the absurdity of it.
Yes.
Think about what those stoners did for Pop-Tarts, Judd.
Oh, the stoner. I
It's
saw
all
an
we
estimate.
talked about in bowl season. It's all we talked about.
I saw an estimate on the worth of like that telecast. It was like $1.5 million.
The
It
best
was just
meme.
free advertising the whole
Just
time.
free-
And
yeah.
it's Pop-Tarts. No one thinks of Pop-Tarts now, but now I do.
Now
The
y'all
best-
think about.
Did you guys see some great memes? The best one I saw was the, and I feel bad, but I mean, you can't not laugh, was the Pop-Tart at the Kennedy assassination.
No.
So, that one, albeit, R.I.P. JFK, that did make me giggle. It was, oh, wait a minute. There's Pop-Tart just standing at the
Grassy
parade.
knoll.
Yeah.
Unpopular opinion, I don't even toast my Pop-Tarts if I were to ever have them.
I think
when
that's
I was a
fine.
Kid, I never toasted them.
A
My
s'mores
kids don't
Pop-Tart
toast
is
theirs.
great.
Both.
Yeah.
S'mores right out of the bag is great.
Yeah.
I feel like Pop-Tarts were far more popular when I through about the early 90s and have sort of regressed a little bit. But I mean, this will definitely help if that's true.
Yeah,
I might be
that's a good
wrong
point.
too.
Jessi, you kind of stole mine. I'm going to dovetail off of you. And my
Okay.
Before I Die was literally going to be, if we're going to continue to do the bowl games, I do think slowly but surely they're going to get phased out. That may start as early as next year, but there's still going to be a massive slate next year. I think you're only going to lose 4 or 6 games next year, even if you lose that many. But to your point, Jessi, embrace the absurdity. If they're truly supposed to be fun, and all these coaches talk about it's a reward for the players, it's a reward for the fan bases, make them fun, make them outlandish, make them crazy. Bravo to the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Bravo.
Well, and it's a joke now because the portal starts immediately
Yes,
after
yeah.
the regular season ends. And so, half these teams, I think Florida State was down 26 guys.
Yeah.
And not surprisingly got smoked. So yes, if you're going to lose players, like that's the thing is, it's so stupid, well, these are great practices. It's a month of practice for who? Like 12 guys?
Yep. They're not
Anyway.
nearly what they used to be, and that
No.
hopefully will get fixed at some point, so maybe you
Well,
have more
playoff will help.
continuity in your bowl roster. But yeah, anybody who's in the 12-team playoff, those guys aren't opting out or transferring. If they
No.
are, they'll wait till after the game.
And that's why, and the two semifinals played on Monday night were so fantastic because that was real football games. You didn't
That's
need
great.
the Pop-Tart in those games, but the Pop-Tart was fun.
We didn't need it, but we would have taken it.
We want it. Yeah. Requested.
Could you see Nick Saban with the Pop-Tart like running around him?
I want to see Alabama fall so far back that Nick Saban is doused with Duke's mayo next year.
Oh, God.
That would he'd retire, right? He would
Yeah, there'd
retire.
be no one left on that
Yeah.
team then. He'd cut them all. He'd cut them all. Okay, before I die, I'm actually going to give credit to my wife Dawn for this, but she's exactly right. Saturday or Sunday? Saturday, I think it was. We had to stop in at Costco for a couple of things. Now it's a weekend, so that's our own fault. But she had a great idea. Anyone who gets a Costco membership should have to take a lesson on how to enter their parking lot and drive in it. I thought that was so like there's a class, a Costco class. Now
Yes.
her thing was it should be twofold because at least at our SLP Costco, everyone gets in the same line and there's like literally like 2 people at this line and 25 people at this one. So her whole thing is that there should be a Costco class. 1, where to get in line, but 2, and I like this more because the parking lot's a gong show here. That you should have to take a class on how to park, because everyone goes right for the same. They go right down that middle lane, or they take a right. You go left, you're fine. So before I die, Costco training will become a thing.
And how to pump gas and navigate the gas, Judd, because you have
Ooh,
people.
I like that.
There will
Right.
be 2 open spots behind the person who's third, right? And the person's just sitting there.
right.
You have enough room to pull up in the middle and pull forward. So that's one. And then I don't know
You're
if
right.
you guys see this because I think you're all part of the Costco family. I don't know if you guys see this, but I see it almost every time I'm there. There is inevitably somebody who is seemingly pumping gas at Costco for the first time. They don't know how to slide their card. They'll put their credit card in like 3 times. It doesn't do anything. I was there a few days ago and the tenant came up and literally had to ask a person, "Sir, are you a member?" The person was not even a member.
Oh, yeah.
Why were they even in line?
Get 'em out.
Yeah. You out of here.
Get them out. And the other thing about that is know which side your gas tank is on. And by the way, it says on your fuel gauge.
Yes.
It will either
Switch
point
between
right
points.
or yes.
But it
there
doesn't
are people
matter.
that don't
doesn't-
know, and so they'll pull up the wrong way, and then they'll try to stretch the damn nozzle all
But
the
it
way
will
around.
stretch. That's the thing. If you park close enough,
Just
it
know
does
which way.
stretch.
This is just
Just know which
natural
side.
selection, you guys. Those
Know
people
which
are.
side the gas
it's
tank is
just-
on. But first of all, learn how to drive. I do not want to get hit in the Costco lot by some moron. Okay, learn how to drive.
Oh, I'm too worked up about this.
You know what? It's
Important
better to
stuff.
get worked up about this than about your Minnesota Vikings because sorry guys, that's how the season is. That's how the cookie crumbles this year. But we've been happy bringing you content each and every week on Before I Die, along with Purple Daily and all of our Score North content. Don't worry. The Wolves are good. You can listen to that over on more of our Score North content. The Wolves have you covered. There's hockey still being played. Judd's Hockey Show. And then again, until the Vikings officially are done, which, they're technically, maybe
Perhaps a Pop-Tart show.
Perhaps a Pop-Tart show. I like that. I like that idea.
Rank
a
the
lot.
Pop-Tarts. We'll start that.
I know this, Jessi and Judd, there are no more games this year in Hennepin County.